The Woe of Roanoke, Book 2, The Chronicle of Thomas Hume. 6 abreast, with fixed bayonets, we marched into the mire. Shadow things gleamed harrowed scenes, born of brandished fire. Nerves were spent as dreams were bent in purple circled gaze. Flambeau sticks played demon tricks on the walls of the garbled maze. James, who was by far a fool, halted by a sunken pool, and thus defended by the foss, said, "Strum, minstrels, before the cross." And as they stayed and played and prayed, I, N, and skittish men marched to fetid moor. A crab brigade held us at bay, for they had raised claw. To reeking ink we flinching inched, when a rat gang scampered rabid. Shooted caps swarmed storms of bats, which warned that we'd invaded. The stifled quiet as rifles fired cracked the cavity. Then eyes got burned as we turned and learned of racked depravity. We bumped about in sickened blunder, sick in mind and sick with chunder. Our souls were so torn asunder in the charnel pit of people plunder. 7 stacks of salted corpses, baskets of torsos, main courses, soup tureens of human beings, nibbled ears in pickled jars, eyeballs in an ornate vase, a store of sawn-off, gnawed-on arses. Seared in morbid awe we stood, a soldier leaked a lake of blood. Panic-stricken torches fell, then another's fatal yell. Rushed on the Goth with a rage of wrath, and chaos cleaved our ranks. A hatchet-heaving, crazed behemoth hewed a swathe in our flanks. She led a hate-filled hurricane, a heinous typhoon. It slammed into our barricades and ploughed through the platoon. 9 men died, 4 more would die, more knelt for mercy's pity. Thence came a clear-rung battle cry, which shored us up with gritty. Pro Rege et Liege, defend the liege, aroused the rousing shout. The captain broke the siege to bend the battle from a rout. Kindled privates raised to rally, muskets spat a leaden volley, vengeful swords pricked many more. N ripped on, the king, the law, till all that was defiant, the mammoth axe-wielded matriarch and a mirrored triad giant. Sacrilege, none shall pass, defile his snoozed church. The muzzard's shrine lurched a sign, a necro-oozing mass. Hails of slugs drilled 4 fat thugs, but on they fought on, praying. Swung sword and axe till shells collapsed, emptied with a spraying. Gunpowder blooms saw sulphur fumes form layered waves of broom. A shadow loomed in hazed gloom, smoked out his basest tomb. The grog-soaked ogre, half hung over, eyed his empire's fall. Dead or caught, the air was fraught as he prowled with a dual maul. But ire was in the eye of N, his spouse assassin now he ken. His passion grew to fired glow, he steeled to pounce, to smite his foe. Sawney's daunting presence failed, crumbled, paled, he tumbled, nailed, his glowered glare blurred to stone. The bully beat, chained and owned. Unclean fiend, James preened behind his wall of armed ward, his clique of poets' notebooks primed for history's record. Force it kneel, may fierce it feel the justice of our Lord. Your souls to pay on judgment day, today you'll bless your king. You'll beg me grace for this disgrace, so yield and kiss my ring. The ogre bridled, dangled guards, strode towards, spoke with barbs, fettered, held, and half-blind drunk, still scared the king and sucked his spunk. Kneeling, yielding, kissing rings, no more talk of witless things, for we both kings and sires of mice, and are we not both mired in vice? I reap souls and rape a few, are souls also thy not taboo? I see so seen your mincing crew, there is a difference twixt us two, your fret of me, not I of you. 'Twas at that moment from the pall, infants from a horror school clamped his padded pants like leeches, the king released and soiled his breeches. He screamed a stream of cussing words, the likes of which I'd never heard. A cussed towel, his bowl the lighter, more an author than a fighter. As biting brats were beaten back, the king's facade began to crack. What before a codpiece itch exploded as a nervous glitch. He dropped his rude to rabbit bounce, howled in bandy-legged flounce, howls of haunts of headless mums, and cussed repents of sodding sons. Sawney and his hellish brood smirked in relish at the lewd, eccentric monarch on display. James, ashamed, vowed they would pay. 47 cannibals, lugged out to morning's light. They mocked him, locked in manacles, jeered on in wounded plight. Jeering all the march duration, acting the king's defamation, ornery, taunting, flaunting bilbos, in the swamps betwixt the enclose of Tolbooth's incarceration, James, citing rightful divination, and to avoid his abdication, ordered mass mutilation. From the raucous throng were ripped their glottis tongues, and dogs were tipped. A slippy slope, thence I slipped. The family thrown in an oubliette, my stance seen as a sovereign threat, my expulsion from the august members, a week which saw my words as embers. Censors raided published places, papers pulped or burnt to ashes, cinders made of any traces, of literature containing traces. Any hint of this affair, written or whispered, would ensnare. Back on the streets at the Jacobean elite, poor pay packets penned in. He pledged my course, the Tower, or worse, if you write again offending. The judge was gruesome, the charge high treason. No defence, not a voice could reason. Yanked by ox to Leith's port market, the menfolk chained to form an orbit. The women watched atop their pyres as beanstalks wrenched off with pliers. They added to the mound of meat with severed hands and severed feet. Sawney was the last expire, stomped blooded stumps in a tongueless blare. They waited till his ire was quenched, then they fired 3 pyres of his weans and his wenches. The screams of weans bore a burden hard. Worse was the sound as my books got charred. The cheers of the crowd soon tired and died as the fire-bit weans were the last beans fried. Silence settled on the square. Their ashes sailed to snow the air. A lone crow stared his murderous stare, then a warning to attending there. From Crown Controller proclamation to Tattlers, trial and convocation. To any who speak of this they'd seen, to the tattered quiet compensation, those at a loss from a Sawney Bean.